June 28th, 1914. An assassin takes down the Archduke of Austria-Hungary. The murder ignites a deadly conflict that quickly erupts into war. From the tangle of alliances, two sides emerge. Britain, France, and Russia become known as the Allies, while Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire form the Central Powers. Filled with a patriotic sense of urgency, men on both sides rush to join the fight. For Hitler, it's the opportunity he's been waiting for. He quickly rushes to enlist.
He tried out for the Austrian army. He failed the physical. He wasn't considered strong enough to carry a rifle.
Rejected by his own country, Hitler turns to the German army, who's accepting almost anyone, as they work to build the largest fighting force in the world. Germany has finally given Hitler what he's always wanted: a place to belong.
I think that the decision to enter the military for most people is not a decision to serve. It may be in a very general sense, but it's more often because something else is motivating you.
Throughout August of 1914, Hitler trains as a private in the German army.
Well, the German army was considered to be the finest army in the world. It was a massive force, well-equipped, well-trained, and very well led. And Hitler was swept away. Being part of the German army was something that Hitler deeply loved.
The structure of training transforms Hitler into a devout German soldier. Hitler joins 1.5 million Germans marching towards the French border and the unified Allied forces. In the history of warfare, armies this large have never met in combat. 6,000 miles away, America has nothing to do with the war in Europe. They're in their own war with Pancho Villa. The Mexican revolutionary is carrying out violent attacks on U.S. citizens along the southwestern border. But he goes too far. Villa and his men seize an American mining train, brutally killing 16 innocent Americans, leaving the U.S. military no choice but to take action. Nearly 5,000 American troops cross the Mexican border to take down Villa. But fighting a guerrilla force with a traditional army is next to impossible. One Army captain is determined to find a different way. His name is George S. Patton.
Patton's ancestors fought in the Revolutionary War. They fought in the Civil War. He grew up wanting to be a military hero. He has a reputation for being smart, tough, and for being ruthless. But he had another quality that's essential in military leadership. He understands the power of technology. and he doesn't want to fight with cavalry and with horses. He's looking for a new technology that will change the nature of the battlefield. So the car is fairly new. If you strap a gun to a car, you've got a new instrument of warfare.
What Patton doesn't know is that he's about to revolutionize warfare.
I think Patton knew only one direction, and that was forward. He had a lot of charisma. He was a very colorful leader. I thought he was very egotistical. And that's fine as long as you translate that into good leadership, but maybe a little bit over the top.
Almost immediately, Patton is able to put his plan into action. And he launches a surprise raid on Pancho Villa's camp.
Faster! Got him on the run, go! Faster! Get down! Go, pick it up!
The bandits are no match for Patton and his mobile army. And by the end of the fight, 3 of Villa's men have been killed, including his second in command. The first use of motorized warfare by the United States Army is a huge success. And for Patton, it's the first step in his rise to greatness. Half a world away, 2 massive armies collide on the battlefield. In the first major war with modern technology.
When you look at World War I, it's about machine guns and, all of these sorts of new killing mechanisms. It's the beginning of the 20th century as a tech era. This is not men on horseback anymore. This is a motorized war.
The advanced weaponry turns the conflict into a slaughter. 230 men are killed each hour. 1 death every 15 seconds.
Really, the machine gun probably did more than anything else. They found that if they dug even shallow trenches and used machine guns, a small number of troops could stop a large attacking force. And then both sides started to dig trenches. And so they were locked along this line, the Western Front, which was this extraordinarily complex set of trenches that didn't move very much either way.
The trenches cover 25,000 miles. Laid end to end, they would circle the globe. The area between the trenches is so deadly, it's known as no man's land. Among the German soldiers stationed in the trenches along the Western Front is Adolf Hitler. But even after months on the front lines, Hitler's still seen as an outcast.
Hitler was regarded by the other troops as something of a loner, something of a rather peculiar, eccentric person who kept to himself.
But what Hitler lacks in popularity, he makes up for in blind ambition.
Command wants this taken to the 3rd Battalion. Now!
Yes, sir.
Hitler's role as a messenger was actually considered perhaps the most dangerous task in trench warfare. Running from trench to trench, exposing himself to enemy fire, the mortality rate for messengers was quite significant.
The Germans are retreating. Adolf Hitler's been injured. And he has this encounter with Private Henry Tandy, British private. Tandy has Adolf Hitler in his sights. And even though he's a trained soldier, he can't bring himself to pull the trigger. If Tandy had pulled the trigger, Adolf Hitler would have died on the battlefields in World War I. And the whole course of human history would have been changed. It's one of the great what-ifs in history.
The world wars had begun, with Britain, France, and Russia squaring off against Germany and the Central Powers. Modern weaponry is causing mass devastation on the battlefields, and tens of thousands of soldiers are now living in overcrowded trenches.
Very soon after the war began, both sides realized we can entrench, and the other side can't move us out. They can move us backwards a little bit, but only at horrendous cost. And as a result of this, the war just bogged down in the muds of northern France.
But in London, one man is convinced he can break the stalemate.
He comes up to the barman and says,
Born into one of the wealthiest families in Britain, he's risen through the ranks at unusual speed to become the head of the British Navy. His name is Winston Churchill.
Churchill had the most enormous self-confidence, and it's easy to see why that was the case. He was the son of Lord Randolph Churchill, who was a brilliant politician, and so Churchill, from a very young man, saw himself, almost by divine right, as playing a leading role in politics.